everyone. My name is Dr. Bahijja Raimi-Abraham, and I am the FIPWiSE Chair. Welcome to this episode of Coffee with FIP, a podcast mini-series designed to provide pharmacy professionals around the world with a dynamic platform for informal, evidence-based, and CPD-aligned discussions on key and timely topics in pharmacy that reflect FIP's strategic priorities and programs. Please note that the views and opinions expressed in this episode do not necessarily represent FIP's official position on the topic unless explicitly stated. This episode today is planned around the theme tackling gender bias and career equity for women pharmacists. And with me today is Dr. Grace Nelson. Dr. Grace Nelson, how are you?
Hi, Dr. Bahija. I'm doing well. And you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. And also, thank you so much for joining us today and to share your thoughts and your insights. Yeah, let us know who you are. Introduce yourself.
Okay, sure. So, as I've been rightly introduced, my name is Grace Nelson. I'm a pharmacist based in Ghana. I currently work as Regulatory Affairs Manager with Novartis Ghana Limited. I've been practicing for close to 10 years. I mean, moving across industries in the pharmaceutical industry and then in the development space, and then coming back into pharmaceuticals again just last year. So that pretty much has been my journey.
I was about to say welcome back. As mentioned, we're going to be discussing and tackling, or well, trying to discuss and unpack what it takes to tackle gender bias and career equity for women pharmacists. In today's episode, we're going to be
Mhm.
exploring unconscious bias and career progression hurdles, as well as looking at how we address work-life balance challenges, that could include pay equity and also overcoming stereotypes. So, to start us off, I'd like to ask you, what do you believe are the most pressing equity challenges for women pharmacists today?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Baida, for the questions. And uh, I think one of the most important starting points in this conversation is that pharmacy is no longer a pipeline problem. It's not like there are not women in the pipeline. In many countries, women actually make up the majority of the pharmacy workforce. And there is data to support that about 60% of women are in the pharmacy workforce. Yet when you look at executive leadership, regulatory authority heads, board positions, academic deanships, the numbers shift dramatically. So the issue isn't entry, it's progression, it's influence, it's who holds the decision-making power. And I'm going to touch on four things that I think are the most pressing workplace equity challenges. Number one is leadership representation. Even in female-dominated environments, pharmacy clearly, women are still underrepresented at senior levels. And this isn't just about competence, it's about structure. Promotion systems are often not to, they are, for lack of better word, they are opaque. Sponsorship is informal and relationship driven, and high visibility assignments aren't always equitably distributed. Sometimes it's relationship driven. And that's where organizations need to shift from passive um, equality to intentional design. And in the summit last 2 weeks, I think I mentioned it that we need to have equity embedded in our systems. It shouldn't be just an afterthought. There should be transparent promotion criteria, diverse hiring panels, structured succession planning. And I serve in a role I got into less than a year ago. And I remember one of my mentors asking me, "So what is your succession plan?" And I was like, "I'm not even up to a year in this role, and you're asking me what my succession plan is already." But then it woke me up that, Grace, if I'm supposed to leave this role now, who am I recommending? Who is the next person I've trained to take up after me? You know, and importantly, sponsorship programs, not just mentorship. Who is going to mention your name in the room when you are not there? I have been privileged to have very amazing sponsors mention me in rooms full of opportunities. And that is one thing we need to do for people who don't have such an opportunity. So, yes, that's one about leadership representation. I also want to touch on work-life integration. Women are subconsciously, we are the primary caregivers, especially for us who have children. But our career model still assumes, an uninterrupted linear progression for everybody. No pauses, no detours. And this model penalizes maternity leave, caregiving breaks, and even flexible working schedules. I've had opportunity of speaking to one brilliant young lady who said she was quitting her job because she had to be in the office every day and she has to travel 2 hours to get to the office every day. And that's such a toll on her because she has a young child under 2 years, you know. So work-life balance is often framed as a personal issue, a lot of the time to be like, okay, yeah, the one's supposed to manage that, not your organization. But it's actually a system design issue. So um we need to find flexible scheduling. I mean, hybrid roles. Now, thankfully, post-COVID, a lot of organizations have agreed to having this hybrid role. So 3 days from the office, 2 days home, or however it's structured to make it work. You know, um, we should also have paid parental leave for all genders. Thankfully, I work for an organization that has actually instituted paternity leave. So we have the men also going on leave as much as their partners after a baby. Because when the men also take a leave, caregiving stops being seen as a woman's, disruption. Because it's not just a woman who is going on leave. The man is also on leave as well to take care of their child, you know. And then there's an issue of gender pay gap, and even after adjusting for the role and experience, we still find disparities persisting globally. And they tend to widen at senior levels, So um, we need to find ways and means, I mean, transparent pay audits, standardized bands that so long as you are within this job level, be it a man or woman, this is what you are going to earn. We need to have structured review cycles and then negotiation trainings built into leadership development programs. One thing about us women a lot is we are socialized to be very humble, you know, you don't need to ask for too much. So we just end up, okay, I'm just gonna take it. When we go for interviews and they even ask, what's your salary expectation? We try to be so humble, we don't actually demand what we are due, and thankfully last year I had opportunity of speaking to a group of women, mothers. And navigating the corporate space, a lot of them had gone on maternity leave, and I spoke to them about negotiate salaries and promotions. And it was one of the very eye-opening sessions for me last year, speaking to to those group of that group of women. Sorry. Yes. So these are real problems: gender pay gap, leadership representation, and work-life integration. These are real problems in our corporate space, and we need to find ways and means of addressing these issues. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your insights. So many things to unpack there. And one
Yeah.
one thing yeah, no, so many things to unpack there in a good way, of course. And it also does highlight the work that needs to be done. Um, I just wanted to just touch on one thing for those listening. You mentioned the event last week. So that was the FIPWiSE inaugural global online summit that was marking the sixth anniversary of FIPWiSE and also aligning with the UN International Day of Women and Girls. It was a very insightful talk, summit and session. But there's so many things that you talked about, and I just want to touch on a few, if you don't mind. So the succession progression and succession plan, and what is that like, needing that to be structured is so important. And also, I think there can be a challenge as well if somebody isn't being managed in the right way, in which that the boss might not want there to be a succession plan for that individual because they're like, oh, this is great talent and I want them to stay there. And so I think having some level of structure, just taking into account your advice, having that structure in place prevents the potential of that, somebody being held back because there isn't that system in place. And where I see value of that is particularly in academia, because in academia, especially after the PhD, achieving PhD, so thinking about postdocs, where there's a lot of short-term contracts, it can be that somebody ends up just staying in the same place over and over again because there isn't that succession and plan. I really liked what you said about sponsorship. I think I've mentioned that is like my hyper focus right now, especially talking about that in the FIPWiSE session at the 2025 Congress and in 2026, which is this year apparently. In 2026, we will also be talking about the difference between mentorship, which you just summarized so perfectly, the difference between mentorship and sponsorship, and how there's a lot of focus on the mentorship. But what about the sponsorship and having structure in that as well? Um, and then you talk about work-life integration. I really loved how you highlight that. And also I just want to even add to that as well, where there's caregiving as it relates to parents or guardians in older life. So with children, and then there's another phase as well where it could be, unfortunately, uh, an older parent has dementia or, something like that, that
A
adds
sick
to it as well.
parent or sick
Ex-sick
sibling.
parent.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so again, that and the gender pay gap, yes, an ongoing challenge. But I really liked what you said about that transparency and communication and talking more and demand what we are due.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And I'm also taking that on board as well. So just leading on from that. So I want to talk more about um, the challenges in progressing in careers. So, how are women in pharmacy overcoming gender stereotypes and unconscious bias to progress in their careers?
All right. Thank you again. Now, in as much as all the challenges I've mentioned are real, in recent times, I find it encouraging how women pharmacists are actively overcoming these challenges. First, I see a lot of women owning technical authority. You know, more women, female pharmacists are strategically deepening their expertise in various fields. Now I go on LinkedIn and I see women in AI-enabled oversight, more women in health policy, supply chain government, a lot of, technical authority which you may not have heard about or which may have been a thing for only another males some years back. More women are embracing them. And when you become the subject matter expert, they shift from being perceived as a support to actually being indispensable. When you have the technical expertise, you shift from doing the office housework. And when I say office housework, women being asked to manage events, take minutes, take do chores that are really not in their job description and that are non-promotable. At the end of the year, it doesn't form part of your review. It just looks like, oh, you were just helping the organization. It's your man, you don't take credit for it. You can take minutes or you can manage an event and actually take credit for it. But we see some people just doing it as office housework. No, I'm happy that a lot more women are building technical authority and taking, the credits they need to take for their work they are doing. Secondly, visibility. Now, visibility is one currency everybody is talking about. Women are publishing more, women are speaking more. Just last week, I saw a post on social media for a global women summit and they were calling for women speakers. And if you see the number of comments and of women expressing interest to speak, I was amazed. Professional platforms like the FIP and initiatives like the FIPWiSE have strengthened us to do that. And it is building the leadership counters invisibility bias because sometimes we women are doing so much but we're not putting it out there. And let me give a classical example. At the just ended World Congress in Copenhagen, when some people's names were being mentioned for awards, and then somebody seated by me said, oh, all these things they are doing, I've been doing a lot of them. And I asked her, who knows about it? Because when you're doing it and nobody knows about it, then I mean, you better not do it because you can be doing great work in your small corner, but nobody knows. So how can you be recognized for it? How can your name be mentioned when the opportunity comes up? So I love the fact that a lot more women are striving to be visible and taking ownership. The next thing, sponsorship and networks. Your favorite word comes up again, sponsorships. Women are no longer navigating alone. We are looking for sponsors, senior leaders who will actively advocate for us, network, joining networks. And now I think the fancy word is community. We are joining communities, communities that provide intelligence, that provide opportunity flow and collective leverage. I've been very fortunate to be part of groups and networks of very powerful women who share powerful opportunities with me. And I can't overemphasize the advantage there is in being part of such network or community. The last thing, maybe last but one, is negotiation and boundary settings. I have seen more women now entering salary discussions with data, you know, asking for credit for work that they have done, you know, and declining disproportionate administrative labor, what I term as office housework, administrative labor. For who's going to arrange this room for the event? Oh, that woman is there. No, no, no. I've seen some women actually turn down those jobs, and that gives me so much joy when I see women do that. Career growth is becoming strategic for a lot more women and just not accidental. And lastly, I would like to talk about data-driven advocacy. It is said that, oh, women are emotional and men are more logical. But now I've seen a lot more women, gathering data to help them in advocacy. You cannot fix what you don't measure. Women leaders are really, gender disaggregated and transparent promotion metrics. And um I mean accountability drives reform. So definitely if we have data to hold people accountable in some few years to come, definitely we are going to see the reform we all hope and pray. So if I'm to, summarize, gender equity in pharmacy is no longer about increasing participation. The women are already present. We just need to redesign systems to distribute opportunity, distribute compensation, and influence more equitably. Yes, so that's what I have to say about how women are navigating. Thank
Dr.
you.
Nelson, everything you said, I was just shaking my head like, yes, yes, because the visibility piece, I also, I'm not gonna lie, I felt personally attacked because I have not been the most visible in the last few. And it's funny because today I am actually meant to be doing some recording and things like that. And there's something I want us to do after this recording that will also be an action for that visibility piece. Visibility is so important. And I think the beauty of platforms such as social media is that you don't need to ask anybody to make you visible. You can start yourself. And I think that's a very valid point because a lot of the time, women are the backbone of so many things and so many activities, but then are not the loudest to shout. So there's that sponsorship, yes, my favorite word, and networks, again, leveraging that. The negotiations and boundaries piece, very, very interesting because I also see it more in various different things. And dare I say, perhaps I see it more within myself as well. And one thing that is interesting when you do set boundaries, particularly around the work you're doing, or saying, some people they go for promotion, they don't get promoted, then they're like, okay, so I'm just going to stick to doing X. It's also how that is received by other people. And I think that probably needs to be a little bit more, how do we support women in being comfortable in setting those boundaries and sustaining them? And then the data-driven advocacy, we know data is what we need more of, actually. And so, yeah, I completely agree with that. So we have come to the end of our chat. First and foremost, Dr. Grace Nelson, I really want to thank you for being a guest. It's been lovely speaking to you. I'd love to speak to you further and more. But thank you for your insights and thank you for the knowledge and perspectives that you have shared. And also, I want to say thank you to the listeners of this Coffee with FIP episode. I wanted to just highlight one of a resource that has been created under FIPWiSE. And this is the FIPWiSE Toolkit for Positive Practice Environments for Women in Science and Education. And this was developed as a resource to raise awareness on key factors that are influencing workplace environments and the toolkit offers tailored strategies to enable positive practice environments. And some of this we've touched on today. So that's equal incentives for equal work, factor one. Factor two, work-life balance. Factor three, creating supportive and safe working environments. Factor four, opportunities for professional development, recognition, and empowerment. And factor five, women in leadership. And so to support stakeholders in effectively using and implementing this toolkit, we have developed a series of short learning resources that highlight the key elements of the toolkit and how to implement them. And this has been provided by Short Learning Resources and developed in three different formats as a short video, a set of cards, and a one-page document. These are all available on the Equity RX microsite, which is the usual equityrx.fip.org/FIPWiSE hyphen short hyphen learning hyphen resources. Thank you very much.